On the busy streets of a growing city stood a magnificent office tower known as Sterling Heights. Every morning, hundreds of employees rushed through its glass doors carrying laptops, coffee cups, and dreams of success. Among them was an elderly janitor named Mr. Samuel. Every day he arrived before sunrise. While the city still slept, he quietly swept the floors, polished the windows, emptied trash bins, and made sure the building looked perfect before anyone else arrived. Most people barely noticed him. Some employees walked past him without saying a word. Others treated him as if he were invisible. A few even complained when they saw him cleaning near their offices. "Can you come back later?" one manager would often say. "You're blocking the hallway." Mr. Samuel would simply smile. "Of course, sir." Then he would continue his work without arguing. The younger employees often laughed at his old uniform. They wondered why a man his age was still working such a simple job. "Poor guy," one worker whispered one morning. "He probably has no choice." The others nodded in agreement. None of them knew the truth. Mr. Samuel wasn't poor. In fact, he was richer than anyone in the building could imagine. But he never corrected them. Instead, he continued pushing his cleaning cart through the hallways, greeting everyone with kindness. One rainy Monday morning, a new employee named Daniel joined the company. Unlike the others, Daniel noticed something unusual. Every morning, Mr. Samuel seemed to know everyone's name. He knew who had recently gotten promoted. He even knew when employees were struggling and needed encouragement. Daniel found it strange. How could a janitor know so much about everyone? One day, while working late, Daniel saw Mr. Samuel standing alone in the lobby. The old man wasn't cleaning. Instead, he was quietly studying a large frame photograph of the building taken decades earlier. There was something thoughtful in his eyes, something that suggested a deeper connection. Daniel became curious. "Mr. Samuel," he asked, "how long have you worked here?" The old man smiled. "Longer than most people can remember." Daniel laughed. "I guess you must know every corner of this place." Mr. Samuel nodded. Every corner, every story, every dream that started here. Daniel didn't fully understand what he meant, but something about the answer stayed with him. Little did Daniel know he was about to uncover a secret that would shock the entire company.
The next morning, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with Mr. Samuel. There was something unusual about the old man. His words didn't sound like those of an ordinary janitor. Every corner, every story, every dream that started here. What did that even mean? As the week went on, Daniel began paying closer attention. He noticed that whenever senior executives entered the building, they greeted Mr. Samuel with surprising respect. Some even stopped to shake his hand. One afternoon, Daniel saw the company's CEO walk across the lobby. The CEO rarely spoke to regular employees. Yet when he saw Mr. Samuel, he smiled warmly. "Good afternoon, Samuel." "Good afternoon, sir," Samuel replied. The CEO nodded respectfully before heading to the elevators. Daniel found it strange. Why would a powerful executive treat a janitor like an old friend? The mystery grew even deeper a few days later. A major storm struck the city. Heavy rain flooded roads and knocked out electricity across several neighborhoods. Many employees left work early. But Daniel stayed behind to finish an important project. By evening, only a handful of people remained in the building. Suddenly the lights flickered. Then the emergency systems activated. Concern spread throughout the offices. Managers rushed from room to room trying to figure out what was happening. In the middle of the confusion, Mr. Samuel remained calm. He quietly walked through the building, checking emergency exits and reassuring worried employees. "Everything will be fine," he said. His confidence surprised everyone. As Daniel watched, he realized something. People were naturally listening to Samuel. Not because of his uniform, but because he carried himself like a leader. Later that night, Daniel found himself trapped in the lobby while waiting for transportation home. The storm outside was fierce. Rain pounded against the glass walls. To pass the time, he sat beside Mr. Samuel. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Samuel pointed toward the framed photograph Daniel had noticed earlier. "Do you see that young man standing in the front row?" he asked. Daniel looked closely. The photograph showed the building's grand opening many years ago. A young man stood near the center, smiling proudly. "Yes," Daniel said. "He looks familiar." Samuel smiled. "That's because you're looking at me." Daniel's eyes widened. "You?" Samuel nodded. "I was much younger then." Daniel stared at the photograph. The resemblance was undeniable. "But why are you in the center of the picture?" he asked. Samuel's smile grew slightly. "Because I played an important role in building this place." Before Daniel could ask another question, Samuel stood up. "I should get back to work." Then he walked away, leaving Daniel with even more questions than before. That night Daniel couldn't sleep. Who exactly was Mr. Samuel? And what important role had he played in the history of Sterling Heights? The answers were closer than he imagined. But when the truth finally came out, the entire company would be stunned. The following week, Daniel's curiosity became impossible to ignore. He needed answers. Every time he passed Mr. Samuel in the hallway, he wondered what secrets the old man was hiding. One afternoon during his lunch break, Daniel decided to do some research. He visited the small archive room located on one of the lower floors of the building. The room contained old photographs, newspaper articles, company records, and historical documents dating back decades. Most employees had no reason to visit it. But Daniel hoped it might reveal something about Samuel's past. After nearly an hour of searching, he found a dusty scrapbook labeled Sterling Heights, The Early Years. His heart began to race. Carefully turning the pages, he discovered photographs from the construction of the building. Workers stood beside steel beams. Engineers reviewed blueprints. Business leaders attended groundbreaking ceremonies. Then Daniel froze. There in multiple photographs was a younger Samuel. Not in a janitor's uniform. In a suit. A very expensive suit. The captions beneath the photographs shocked him even more. One read, "Samuel Thompson addresses investors during construction." Another read, "Founder Samuel Thompson announces expansion plans." Daniel blinked several times. "Founder? That couldn't be right." He quickly turned more pages. Every article told the same story. Decades earlier, Samuel Thompson had been a successful entrepreneur. He had started with almost nothing. As a young man, he worked countless jobs, saved every penny he could, and eventually launched a small property business. Through hard work, patience, and smart decisions, he built a real estate company that grew year after year. His greatest achievement was Sterling Heights, the very building where Daniel now worked. Daniel sat back in disbelief. The janitor wasn't just connected to the building. He had created it. Before he could continue reading, another article caught his attention. Its headline read, "Business Leader Steps Down Following Family Tragedy." The article explained that many years earlier, Samuel had lost his wife in a sudden illness. Not long afterward, his only son died in a tragic accident. Friends reported that the losses changed him forever. Rather than focusing on wealth and status, Samuel became interested in helping others. He gradually stepped away from public attention. Eventually, younger executives took over daily operations of the company. Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. For the first time, he understood that Samuel's story was far more complicated than anyone realized. The old man had experienced incredible success, but he had also endured unimaginable pain. As Daniel continued reading, he discovered one final piece of information. Samuel still owned the majority of the company. Daniel's eyes widened. He read the sentence again. And again. There was no mistake. The elderly janitor pushing a cleaning cart through the hallways wasn't simply a former executive. He was still the principal owner of the entire building. Daniel nearly dropped the document. At that moment, footsteps echoed behind him. He turned around. Standing at the doorway was Mr. Samuel. The old man glanced at the scrapbook and smiled gently. "I suppose you found the answers you were looking for." Daniel stood speechless. I don't understand," he stammered. "If you own this company, why are you cleaning floors?" Samuel looked around the quiet archive room before answering. "Because this building was never about money." Daniel listened carefully. Samuel continued. When people see a title, they treat you differently. When they see wealth, they act differently. But when they think you're ordinary, they show you who they really are. The words hit Daniel like a thunderbolt. For years, employees had judged Samuel without knowing who he was. Some had ignored him. Some had mocked him. Some had treated him with kindness. And all along he had quietly watched. Not with anger, but with understanding. Daniel suddenly realized something else. The biggest surprise was still yet to come. For a moment, neither Daniel nor Mr. Samuel spoke. The archive room was silent except for the distant hum of the building's air conditioning. Daniel struggled to process everything he had learned. The humble janitor everyone ignored was actually the founder and majority owner of Sterling Heights. It seemed impossible. Yet all the evidence was right there in front of him. I don't know what to say, Daniel finally admitted. Samuel smiled. You don't have to say anything. But why keep it a secret? Daniel asked. Samuel looked thoughtfully at an old photograph hanging on the wall. When I was younger, I thought success was measured by money, buildings, and recognition. He paused. Then life taught me that the most valuable thing isn't what people think of you. It's who you are when nobody is impressed by your title. Daniel listened carefully. Every word carried the weight of experience. For years, Samuel had chosen a simple life. He continued cleaning the building because it kept him connected to people. It reminded him where he started. And it allowed him to see the true character of those around him. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A senior executive accidentally discovered the same information Daniel had found. Within hours, whispers spread throughout the company. Employees gathered in break rooms, hallways, and offices. Did you hear the rumors? They say Samuel owns the building. No way. It can't be true. But as more records surfaced, the truth became impossible to deny. Shock swept through Sterling Heights. The same people who had ignored Samuel for years suddenly viewed him differently. Some employees felt embarrassed. Others felt ashamed. A few were terrified. One manager remembered every rude comment he had ever made. Another recalled constantly ordering Samuel around without even learning his name. As the day went on, many employees began approaching Samuel. Some offered awkward apologies. Others tried to impress him. A few suddenly became overly friendly. Samuel accepted every apology with grace. But he noticed something important. The people who had always treated him kindly behaved exactly the same as before. They greeted him with the same respect. They spoke to him with the same warmth. Nothing had changed. That evening, the company's leadership team announced an emergency staff meeting. Every employee was required to attend. The large conference hall filled quickly. Hundreds of workers took their seats. Excitement and nervousness filled the room. Then the CEO stepped onto the stage. Behind him stood Mr. Samuel, still wearing his janitor's uniform. The sight stunned everyone. The room fell completely silent. The CEO smiled and addressed the crowd. For years, many of you have worked alongside a remarkable man without knowing his story. He turned toward Samuel, the founder of Sterling Heights, the person whose vision created opportunities for all of us. A wave of whispers spread through the audience. The CEO continued. Tonight, Mr. Samuel has asked to speak to everyone personally. Samuel slowly walked to the podium. He looked across the room at the faces staring back at him. Some looked nervous. Some looked guilty. Some looked emotional. Samuel took a deep breath. Then he began speaking. What he said next would leave a lasting impact on everyone in the room. The conference hall was completely silent. Hundreds of employees watched as Mr. Samuel stood behind the podium. For years, they had seen him pushing a cleaning cart through the hallways. Now they were discovering who he truly was. Samuel looked across the room and smiled warmly. I know many of you are surprised tonight. A few nervous laughs echoed through the audience. Samuel continued. Some of you are probably wondering why I spent so many years working as a janitor when I could have lived a very different life. He paused. The answer is simple. I wanted to remember where I came from. The room remained silent. When I was a young man, I had nothing. I worked jobs nobody wanted. I swept floors. I carried heavy boxes. I cleaned offices after everyone else had gone home. Many people overlooked me. Many people believed I would never become anything important. Samuel smiled. But those years taught me lessons that success never could. Several employees lowered their eyes. They knew exactly where this was going. I learned that every person deserves respect. It doesn't matter what uniform they wear. It doesn't matter how much money they have. It doesn't matter what title appears on their office door. The room grew even quieter. The true measure of a person is how they treat people who can do nothing for them. The words landed heavily. Many employees thought back to moments they wished they could undo. The rude comments, the dismissive attitudes, the times they had ignored someone simply because they seemed unimportant. Samuel continued. For years, I walked these hallways and met extraordinary people. I met employees who treated me with kindness every single day. I met people who asked how I was doing. I met people who respected me even when they believed I was just a janitor. His eyes moved toward Daniel. And those people revealed something beautiful about their character. Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. Then Samuel's expression softened. But this story isn't about mistakes. It's about growth. Every one of us has judged someone too quickly. Every one of us has overlooked a person who deserved our attention. What matters is what we choose to do after realizing it. For a moment, nobody spoke. Some employees wiped tears from their eyes. Others stared thoughtfully at the floor. Then Samuel smiled again. I don't want your apologies. The audience looked surprised. I want your actions. Starting tomorrow, treat people differently. Learn names. Show gratitude. Respect the security guards. Respect the cleaners. Respect the receptionists. Respect everyone. Because every person you meet is carrying a story you know nothing about. The room erupted into applause. Not polite applause. Not forced applause. But heartfelt applause. Many employees stood to their feet. Then everyone else followed. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. That night changed Sterling Heights forever. In the months that followed, the culture of the company transformed. Employees became more thoughtful, more respectful, more compassionate. New workers quickly noticed the difference. And whenever someone asked why the company culture was so strong, people would tell the story of Mr. Samuel. The janitor everyone ignored, the founder nobody recognized, the man who reminded everyone that character matters more than status. Years later, when Samuel finally retired, a plaque was placed in the lobby. It didn't mention his wealth. It didn't mention the buildings he owned. It didn't mention his business success. Instead, it carried a simple message. Treat every person with dignity. You never know the greatness hidden behind an ordinary face. And every day as employees walked past those words, they remembered the lesson that changed their lives forever.